For 6 years, I sat in the same corner of the same classroom, then the same office, then the same family dinner table, and nobody ever really looked at me twice. Not out of cruelty, just indifference. I was the coworker whose name got mixed up in meetings, the son whose achievements got a distracted nod before the conversation moved back to my older brother, the friend people invited out of habit rather than genuine want. I'd made peace with it, mostly. I told myself being forgettable wasn't the same as being worthless. I was wrong about a lot of things, but I was especially wrong about that, because on a completely ordinary Tuesday evening, standing alone in my apartment kitchen like I had 1,000 times before, my left hand began to turn transparent, and within 11 seconds, it wasn't skin anymore. It was glass. My name is Hina, and until that Tuesday, I was exactly the kind of person nobody would ever think to write a story about. Now, 6 days later, roughly 40% of my body has hardened into something between glass and crystal, cold and faintly luminous under the right light. And the same people who spent years forgetting I existed can no longer look away from me, even if they wanted to. There's a specific kind of bitterness in that, one I haven't fully worked through yet. I spent years wishing someone would notice me. Now an entire country can't stop. The transformation didn't happen all at once, which somehow made it worse. My left hand went first, on that Tuesday, spreading slowly up my wrist over the following hour, while I sat frozen on my kitchen floor, too stunned to even call anyone. By the second day, it had reached my elbow. By the fourth, my collarbone. I documented none of it publicly at first, mostly out of the same old instinct, the quiet, practiced assumption that whatever was happening to me probably wasn't important enough for anyone to care about. I genuinely believed, even as my own arm turned to something that caught the light like a chandelier, that if I mentioned it out loud, people would simply nod distractedly and change the subject the way they always had. I was wrong about that too. On the 5th day, I finally went to urgent care, mostly because the transformed portion of my arm had started emitting a faint, rhythmic pulse of light that frightened me too much to keep ignoring. The nurse who examined me went pale within seconds, stepped out of the room without a word, and returned 4 minutes later with 2 doctors and a security guard. By that evening, footage of my arm, filmed without my permission by someone in the waiting room, had already been uploaded, viewed, and re-uploaded across every platform that existed. For the first time in my entire life, strangers by the millions were saying my name. I wish I could tell you it felt good. Mostly, it felt like drowning in something I'd asked for years too late. The official chaos began almost immediately after that leaked footage spread. News vans arrived outside the small clinic within hours, then outside my actual apartment building by the next morning, camped there with a persistence no one in my life had ever shown toward me before. Medical researchers, then physicists, then people describing themselves vaguely as materials specialists, all appeared on competing broadcasts within the same 24-hour window, each offering some version of the same fundamentally unsatisfying explanation. Human tissue does not spontaneously restructure itself into a rigid, light-refracting crystalline material without some external force altering matter at a level modern science doesn't yet have instruments capable of measuring. Nobody had an actual answer. By the end of that first public day, headlines had already settled on a name for what was happening to me. One I found genuinely difficult to read about myself. The Glass Girl. That's when the actual chaos started. The kind that doesn't stay contained to a screen. On the 7th morning after the transformation began, a convoy of unmarked vehicles arrived outside my building before sunrise, and personnel in full protective gear moved through the hallway with the same practiced calm I'd later learn was standard procedure for events considered classified. They didn't ask permission. They didn't offer much explanation beyond a single sentence, delivered gently but without any real room for negotiation. I needed to come with them immediately, for my own safety and, though they didn't say this part out loud, for everyone else's. I was taken to a research facility built into a converted hospital wing on the outskirts of the city, its newer sections retrofitted with monitoring equipment that looked jarringly modern against the older hospital architecture surrounding it. There, in a sterile observation room lined with cameras and biometric sensors, I met Dr. Renata Osei, an endocrinologist turned lead researcher on whatever internal project designation they'd assigned to my case. When I demanded to know what was actually happening to my body, she didn't offer false comfort. She pulled up a full-body scan instead, one showing the transformed portions of my arm and shoulder, rendered in a strange, layered, false-color image. The tissue transformation isn't uniform, she explained, her voice careful and measured, in the way people get when they're trying not to alarm someone who's already frightened enough. It's following a specific pattern, Hina, one that maps almost exactly onto areas of your body associated with chronic, sustained stress response. Your left arm, your shoulder, the base of your neck. These are precisely the regions where the body physically stores tension built up over years of unresolved emotional strain. That sentence landed somewhere I wasn't prepared for. I wasn't just experiencing a random, meaningless biological anomaly. Whatever was rewriting my own cells seemed to be doing so specifically along the map of every year I'd spent quietly absorbing being overlooked. Every tense shoulder, every clenched jaw during another conversation where my name got forgotten mid-sentence. My own body, it seemed, had been keeping score the entire time, long before I consciously understood it was. Over the following days, researchers ran test after test, keeping me in a private observation suite, while a rotating team of specialists documented everything from blood chemistry to bone density to the faint pulse of light now visible beneath my transformed skin whenever the room went dark. Every test came back with some version of the same frustrating non-answer. My blood work was normal, my vital signs were normal, and yet the glass kept spreading, roughly an inch further every 12 hours, methodical and unhurried, as if it were working according to a private timeline nobody in that facility had access to. On the third night in the facility, Dr. Osei brought something up that changed the entire framing of my case, and honestly, it's the part of this story I still find hardest to sit with. She'd pulled historical hospital and clinic records, cross-referencing them against a small, quietly growing list of similar cases reported globally over the past several years, cases that had been misdiagnosed, dismissed, or simply never publicly connected to one another before mine went viral and forced the medical community to finally take a second look. "You're not the first person this has happened to, Hina," she said, sliding a folder across the table toward me. "You're just the first person loud enough, visible enough, that nobody could quietly look away this time." Inside that folder were 7 other cases, spanning 4 different countries over the past 11 years, each one involving a person who had reported a slow, localized hardening of the skin, always beginning in areas tied to chronic physical tension, and each one dismissed at the time as an unusual skin condition, treated superficially, and eventually lost entirely from any centralized medical record. 6 of those 7 people, according to the notes in that folder, had specifically described feeling persistently overlooked, unseen, or emotionally invisible in the years leading up to their own transformation's beginning. The 7th case had no accompanying psychological notes at all, just a single, chilling addendum: patient discharged. Follow-up appointment not attended, whereabouts currently unknown. I sat with that folder in my lap for a long time before I said anything else that night. 300 miles away, in a small apartment above a hardware store, a man named Marcus was experiencing the exact same thing I was, though neither of us knew it yet. Marcus was 34, a warehouse inventory clerk who'd been passed over for the same promotion 4 separate times, each round going to someone louder, someone who'd learned to make sure the right people noticed them in meetings. He noticed the first patch on his own body 2 days after mine started, a small, cool, glassy spot forming just beneath his collarbone, while he sat alone eating dinner in front of a television nobody else was watching with him. Unlike me, Marcus didn't go to urgent care right away. He didn't tell anyone at all, not even after it spread to his shoulder, not even after the faint pulsing light started keeping him awake at night. He'd spent his entire adult life absorbing disappointment quietly, and some deeply worn groove in his thinking told him this too, was simply something to endure alone. It was only when a coworker finally noticed the strange shimmer beneath his shirt collar during a shift change, and reacted with a mixture of horror and fascination Marcus had never once seen directed at him before, that his own case reached the same research network mine had already been folded into. By the time Dr. Osei's team located him and brought him in for observation, 3 days behind my own timeline, his transformation had already progressed further than mine had at the same stage, as though his years of silence had given it an unusually deep well to draw from. On the 5th night in the facility, everything accelerated in a way none of us were prepared for. I woke abruptly at just past 3 in the morning to a low, resonant hum coming from directly beneath my own skin, loud enough that it startled the researcher monitoring the overnight shift into paging Dr. Osei immediately. By the time she arrived, the transformed portion of my body had spread visibly further just in those few hours, crossing from my collarbone up along the left side of my neck, and the faint internal light I'd grown almost used to had intensified into something closer to a steady, deliberate pulse, matching my own heartbeat with unnerving precision. The rate of progression has never accelerated like this before, not in any of the documented cases, Dr. Osei said, reviewing the data with visibly shaking hands, her earlier calm authority genuinely cracking for the first time since I'd met her. Something has changed tonight, either in your body or somewhere entirely outside it. That's when the wider picture, the part none of us had seen coming, started to reveal itself. Reports began arriving from research stations in 3 other countries almost simultaneously, each one describing something eerily familiar. A person, previously undiagnosed, previously unremarkable in every clinical sense, suddenly beginning to exhibit the exact same localized glass transformation I'd been living with for over a week now. All 3 cases had begun accelerating in the same overnight window mine just had. Marcus's case, being monitored in a separate wing of the very same facility I was in, without either of us knowing the other existed yet, had accelerated at precisely the same hour. Dr. Osei stared at the incoming reports for a long moment, before finally voicing the theory that had clearly been forming in the back of her mind for days. We don't think this is a disease anymore, Hina. We think it might be a response. Something, somewhere, may have started actively searching for people who share this exact profile, and once it finds enough of you, all at roughly the same time, we believe it intends to do something we don't yet understand with that connection. Before I could fully process what something we don't yet understand might actually mean, the facility's overnight alarms began sounding in short, urgent bursts. And through the observation room's reinforced window, I watched security personnel scrambling toward the building's lower levels, where sensors had apparently just detected an anomalous energy signature rising from directly beneath the facility's own foundation, precisely underneath the wing, where both Marcus and I had been sleeping only minutes earlier, in rooms neither of us knew were separated by less than 50 feet of hallway. Dr. Osei grabbed my arm gently, careful of the transformed section now creeping toward my jaw, her voice dropping into something quieter and considerably less clinical than before. Hina, I don't think whatever is happening to you is punishment, and I don't think it's random cruelty either. Based on everything we've documented across every case in that folder, including someone else in this very building right now going through the exact same thing you are, I think something has been quietly collecting people the world forgot how to see, for reasons none of us understand yet, and I think tonight, it's finally ready to reach the surface and show itself. I looked down at my own transformed hand, glinting faintly under the observation room's harsh overhead lights, and felt, for the first time since that ordinary Tuesday evening in my kitchen, something shift beneath the fear, a small, unfamiliar spark of something closer to recognition. 6 years of being overlooked had taught me exactly what it felt like to be invisible in a room full of people. I understood, somewhere beneath the panic building around me now, that whatever was rising from beneath this facility already understood that feeling far better than any person in my life ever had, and somewhere down the same hallway, a stranger named Marcus was staring at his own glowing hands, feeling the exact same thing. Thank you for watching Anime Echo Tales. If you want to find out what's rising beneath the facility, what it wants from Hina and Marcus, and how many others like them are still out there waiting to be found, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Is it coming to save them or to claim them? The next chapter of this story is coming very soon. Some people spend years being invisible. It seems something out there has been watching the whole time.